Hello everyone, welcome. Help me grow my channel by subscribing. Tell me which place are you talking about. And now let's get started. Rachel Wilson, 27, worked as a receptionist at a small dental office in Atlanta. Standing 5'5" with straight brown hair and warm hazel eyes, she'd been on Tinder for 4 months since moving to Georgia for the job. Her one-bedroom apartment in a modest complex near the office provided just enough space for her and her rescue cat, Whiskers. After another long day of scheduling appointments and handling insurance claims, Rachel settled into her evening routine. The soft glow of her laptop illuminated her small living room as she mindlessly swiped through profiles, reality TV playing quietly in the background. Most matches either never messaged or quickly turned inappropriate. That's when she came across Andrew's profile. At 32, he worked as a nurse at the local hospital, his photos showing him in scrubs and casual settings with friends. His bio mentioned loving animals, watching true crime documentaries, and trying new restaurants. The combination of a caring profession and shared interests caught her attention. Nothing about his profile raised immediate concerns. He had a verified badge, clear photos that looked natural rather than staged, and a reasonable number of social media connections. His smile seemed genuine in every picture, especially the one with his elderly patients at the hospital's long-term care unit. Rachel found herself examining his profile longer than usual. His job suggested stability and compassion, while his hobbies aligned perfectly with hers. Even his taste in music and movies, listed briefly in his bio, matched her preferences. After a few minutes of consideration, she swiped right, trying not to get her hopes up. They matched instantly, and his first message seemed refreshingly normal. "Hey, I noticed you work near Central Medical. I'm there all the time for patient transfers. Small world. How long have you been in Atlanta?" Their initial exchanges focused on their jobs in healthcare, sharing stories about difficult patients and long days. Andrew's knowledge of medical procedures and hospital protocols seemed genuine, and he asked thoughtful questions about her work at the dental office. His responses showed real interest without being pushy. As the week progressed, their conversations deepened. Andrew shared details about his nursing shifts, describing the challenges and rewards of patient care. When Rachel mentioned stressful situations at work, he offered understanding and support, drawing from his own experiences in healthcare. His empathy felt authentic and professional. Their shared interest in true crime documentaries led to long discussions about psychology and human nature. Andrew displayed impressive knowledge about forensics and medical aspects of criminal cases, which he attributed to his emergency room experience. Each message revealed more common ground between them. By Thursday, they'd established remarkably similar schedules due to their healthcare jobs. Andrew seemed to know exactly when her lunch breaks were, often messaging during her downtime. When she mentioned specific medical office procedures, he showed surprising familiarity with dental practices. The conversation moved naturally to meeting in person. Andrew suggested the hospital cafeteria, explaining it would be safe and public. Plus, he could show her around during his break. Everything about his approach seemed considerate and professional, focused on making her feel secure. The hospital cafeteria bustled with typical lunchtime activity when Rachel arrived. Andrew was already there, wearing dark blue scrubs that matched his profile photos perfectly. His hospital ID badge hung professionally from his pocket, the photo and credentials clearly visible. They found a quiet table in the corner, and Andrew brought over coffee for both of them. His knowledge of hospital operations seemed comprehensive as he pointed out different staff members and explained various departments. Everything appeared to validate his position as a trusted healthcare worker. As they talked, Rachel noticed small inconsistencies in his stories. Some of the medical procedures he described seemed outdated, and certain hospital protocols he mentioned didn't quite match what she knew from her dental office's interactions with the hospital. When another nurse walked past, Andrew's greeting seemed rehearsed. The cafeteria gradually emptied as lunch hour ended, but Andrew showed no sign of returning to his shift. When Rachel mentioned needing to get back to work, he suggested showing her the new wing of the hospital first. His insistence felt stronger than mere friendliness. Looking around, Rachel realized they were now alone in the cafeteria. The security camera she'd noticed earlier appeared to be off, its red light dark. Andrew's professional demeanor had taken on an intensity that made her uncomfortable, his eyes constantly tracking her movements. The atmosphere changed as Andrew led Rachel through empty hospital corridors. His friendly nurse persona began slipping, replaced by something colder and more calculated. When she tried to turn back toward the cafeteria, his hand gripped her elbow with clinical precision. Through rising panic, Rachel noticed they weren't heading toward any public areas. Andrew's badge, which had looked so legitimate earlier, bore subtle signs of tampering. His knowledge of the hospital's layout was extensive, but not in the way a regular nurse would know it. "The security cameras on this floor are down for maintenance," he mentioned casually, his voice losing its warmth. Such a shame about the budget cuts affecting hospital security. Each word revealed more about how carefully he'd planned this moment, using his fake medical credentials to move freely through the building. Rachel's attempt to reach for her phone was met with a practiced response. Andrew recited her emergency contacts from memory, demonstrating just how thoroughly he'd studied her life. His scrubs, she now realized, were just costumes, tools for hunting in a healthcare environment. The hospital's labyrinthine corridors felt like a maze designed to disorient. Every turn took them further from populated areas, while Andrew continued speaking in that unnervingly calm voice about pain thresholds and sedation techniques. His medical knowledge wasn't from nursing, it was from something much darker. The truth emerged with clinical brutality. Andrew wasn't a nurse. He was a predator who used the healthcare system's built-in trust to access victims. His hospital ID was forged, but good enough to fool most security checkpoints. The nurse's uniform provided invisibility in a place where medical staff moved freely. Multiple phones in his pocket revealed other victims, all women who worked in healthcare-adjacent fields, chosen for their understanding of medical environments. Rachel's dental office background had made her an ideal target, familiar enough with hospitals to be comfortable, but not enough to spot the inconsistencies in his cover story. Through her terror, Rachel recognized their location. They were approaching the old psychiatric wing, officially closed for renovations. Andrew's knowledge of the hospital came from studying its vulnerabilities, not from working there. Every security gap, every blind spot in camera coverage had been carefully mapped. But Andrew had made one critical mistake. In studying hospital security, he'd missed a recent update. The new silent alarm system installed after a series of equipment thefts. The same system Rachel had accidentally triggered when her ID badge, synced with her dental office's medical network, registered her presence in an unauthorized area. Security protocols had changed, but Andrew's information was outdated. Modern hospitals had evolved beyond simple camera systems, implementing sophisticated tracking for all medical personnel and visitors. His careful research had missed the latest innovations in healthcare security. Hospital security responded to the silent alarm with practiced efficiency. Years of dealing with drug theft and patient safety had created rapid response protocols that even Andrew's extensive planning couldn't anticipate. His familiarity with the old security systems proved useless against new integrated technologies. Investigation revealed the full scope of his operation. Andrew had targeted healthcare workers across multiple facilities, using stolen and forged credentials to move between hospitals. His approach was methodical, studying victims through their predictable medical office routines, using professional terminology to build trust, and exploiting the natural cooperation between healthcare facilities. Rachel's experience led to improved security measures throughout the medical community. Hospitals enhanced their ID verification systems, and small practices like her dental office implemented better protocols for validating medical credentials. The incident exposed how easily healthcare settings could become hunting grounds for predators exploiting professional trust. The dating apps remained deleted on her phone, but Rachel continued her work in healthcare with new awareness. She helped develop training programs for medical office staff about security and credential verification. Her story became a warning in healthcare circles about how predators could exploit the industry's culture of trust and collaboration. Months later, during the trial, Rachel learned she wasn't the first healthcare worker Andrew had targeted, but she would be the last. His tactics had worked precisely because they exploited fundamental aspects of medical environments: the trust in uniforms, the assumption of professional courtesy, the easy access granted to healthcare workers. Today, Rachel still works in healthcare, now as an office manager with a focus on security protocols. She's more cautious about verifying credentials, but hasn't lost her belief in medical professionals' fundamental goodness. Her experience taught her that in healthcare, trust must be balanced with verification, and that sometimes the most dangerous predators are those who understand exactly how to exploit systems designed to help people. Amanda Torres, 28, worked as a social media manager for a small fashion boutique in Los Angeles. Her petite 5'4" frame and natural dark curls made her stand out in the endless stream of influencer-style profiles on Hinge, where she'd been for 2 months since her last relationship ended. Sitting in her Venice Beach studio apartment, scrolling through profiles after a long day of photo shoots, she paused on David's photos. At 33, he was a freelance photographer who specialized in fashion and lifestyle content, exactly the kind of work she coordinated for the boutique. His portfolio showed genuine talent, capturing candid moments with natural light and expert composition. Unlike the over-edited influencer shots she dealt with daily, his work had an authentic quality that spoke to her professional eye. Each image demonstrated technical skill while maintaining artistic integrity. The boutique she worked for had been looking for a new photographer for their spring campaign. David's style matched their aesthetic perfectly, and his client list included several reputable fashion brands. His timing couldn't have been better. They needed someone to start next month. Their match was instant, and his first message was intriguingly professional. "Love what you did with the boutique's latest campaign. The lighting concepts were innovative. Would enjoy discussing your vision for future shoots." It seemed like an opportunity both personally and professionally. Their initial messages blended shop talk with personal connection. David showed impressive knowledge of photography trends and technical details, while also maintaining engaging conversation about life in LA. His insights about the fashion industry seemed well-informed and current. Throughout the week, their chats became increasingly focused on the boutique's upcoming campaign. David shared his portfolio in more detail, including behind-the-scenes shots that demonstrated his professional process. Each image showcased perfect understanding of what Amanda's brand needed. As a photography expert, he asked specific questions about the boutique's current setup, equipment, and shooting locations. His technical knowledge was impressive, though his curiosity about their security system and after-hours access seemed oddly detailed for preliminary discussions. Their conversations shifted between professional planning and personal sharing. David mentioned shooting at locations Amanda frequented, describing details about her regular coffee shop and yoga studio that he claimed to notice in social media backgrounds. His observations grew increasingly specific. When he suggested meeting at his studio to show her his equipment and discuss the campaign, it seemed like a reasonable professional step. The address he provided was in a well-known photography district, and he mentioned several fashion clients who could verify his work. The studio was housed in a converted warehouse, its industrial exterior matching the artsy neighborhood vibe. David greeted Amanda with professional courtesy, dressed exactly as in his profile photos. The space was well-equipped with high-end photography gear and fashion backdrop setups. As he showed her around, Amanda noticed small inconsistencies. Some of the equipment looked barely used, and the client photos on display seemed slightly off, as if digitally altered to appear in the space. When she mentioned specific brands he'd claimed to work with, his responses became vague. The studio's layout felt strategically designed, with the main shooting area isolated from street view. The windows, which had appeared normal from outside, were actually one-way mirrors. Each room they entered seemed to lead further from the exit, while David's questions became increasingly personal. The supposedly busy studio was completely empty of other staff or clients, despite him mentioning a full shooting schedule. When Amanda tried to check her phone for the time, she found no signal, unusual for central LA. David explained it was due to the building's special insulation for lighting control. Looking more closely at the photography equipment, Amanda's professional knowledge flagged serious concerns. The cameras were arranged to cover all angles of the space, but they weren't set up for fashion shoots. They were surveillance cameras disguised as photography equipment. The temperature seemed to drop as David's photographer persona began to fade. His technical photography terms shifted from fashion jargon to surveillance terminology. Each camera's position had been carefully planned to track movement throughout the studio, creating an inescapable observation zone. Amanda's attempt to move toward the exit was met with smooth redirection, David's movements showing practiced precision. "The lighting here is perfect for capturing genuine fear," he said, his voice losing its professional warmth. "Much better than those staged fashion shots." Through rising panic, Amanda realized the extent of his preparation. The portfolio that had impressed her was stolen from real photographers, digitally altered to feature his face in behind-the-scenes shots. Every piece of his professional identity had been carefully crafted to appeal to fashion industry workers. The studio's layout revealed its true purpose: a carefully constructed trap disguised as a photography space. Each room was soundproofed under the guise of acoustic treatment for shoots. The equipment, while real, had been selected for its dual purpose in restraint and documentation. David moved with the confidence of someone who had orchestrated this scene many times before. His knowledge of photography hadn't come from fashion shoots, but from studying how to document his victims. Every detail of the space had been designed to appear legitimate while serving a darker purpose. The truth emerged in horrifying clarity. David wasn't just one photographer, but many. His identity was a composite of stolen portfolios and altered credentials, designed to attract fashion industry professionals. The studio walls displayed his real work: surveillance photos of previous victims, each documented with technical precision. His phone contained folders of research on Amanda, screenshots from her social media, photos of her at work events, detailed notes about her daily routines. Her interest in photography had made her an ideal target, her professional knowledge used against her to build trust. The cameras were already recording, their real purpose finally clear. David had staged everything to look like a legitimate photo. Shoot gone wrong. His meticulous documentation designed to blend with his fake portfolio. Each victim had been selected for their connection to photography or fashion. But David had made one crucial mistake. In studying Amanda's social media presence, he'd missed her recent collaboration with a security consulting firm. The boutique's new spring campaign wasn't just about fashion. It was a partnership with a company that specialized in protecting fashion industry professionals. The security firm had insisted on tracking everyone involved in the upcoming campaign. Amanda's phone, which appeared to have no signal, was actually transmitting her location and audio to their monitoring center. Every word of David's revelation was being recorded and traced. The security team's response was swift and professional. They had been monitoring the meeting as part of their standard protocol for protecting fashion industry clients. David's carefully constructed studio turned into evidence as specialized teams documented everything before he could destroy it. Investigation revealed the scope of his operation. Multiple fashion professionals had disappeared after meeting with photographers for potential collaborations. David had used his knowledge of the industry to create a perfect cover, exploiting the fashion world's reliance on freelance connections and portfolio reviews. The incident led to major changes in how the fashion industry handled photographer verification. Amanda helped develop new protocols for checking credentials and meeting new collaborators. Her experience highlighted how predators could exploit the industry's rapid pace and casual networking culture. Her role at the boutique expanded to include security consultation for other fashion brands. The spring campaign she'd discussed with David became a safety awareness project instead, helping fashion professionals recognize and avoid similar predatory schemes. The world of fashion photography changed after David's arrest. Studios implemented stricter security measures, and professionals developed better systems for verifying credentials. Amanda's story became a cautionary tale about how technical knowledge could be weaponized within creative industries. Today, Amanda still works in fashion, but with a deeper understanding of security. She helps other professionals recognize the difference between genuine collaboration opportunities and carefully crafted traps. Her experience taught her that in creative fields, the most dangerous predators are those who know how to exploit artistic trust. Katie Anderson, 26, taught third grade at an elementary school in suburban Houston. Her 5'6" frame and warm smile made her popular with students and parents alike. After moving to Texas for her teaching job, she'd been on Bumble for 3 months, hoping to meet someone outside the education system. Her small apartment felt especially quiet during winter break as she scrolled through profiles one evening. Being new to the area, most of her social circle consisted of other teachers, which made dating complicated. She wanted someone who understood her passion for education without being directly involved in it. Matthew's profile caught her attention. At 31, he worked in educational technology, developing learning apps for children. His photos showed him volunteering at youth centers and coaching Little League. Unlike the usual profiles she encountered, his seemed genuinely focused on making a difference in children's lives. His background check verification badge and LinkedIn profile added credibility to his claims. The educational apps he'd developed were well-reviewed and used by several school districts. Everything about his online presence aligned with someone who cared about child development and education. When they matched, His first message showed real understanding of her field. Love how you incorporate art into STEM learning. Saw your classroom blog about the solar system project. Creative teaching methods are so important. Katie smiled, impressed he'd taken time to research her work. Their initial chats centered around education and child development. Matthew shared insights about learning technologies and asked thoughtful questions about classroom dynamics. His knowledge of educational theory seemed comprehensive and up to date. As they talked more, Matthew demonstrated increasing familiarity with Katie's school and teaching methods. He knew about specific projects she'd done, classroom arrangements, and even her students' weekly schedule. When questioned, he explained he'd researched her school while developing apps for the district. Their discussions about education became more detailed, with Matthew showing particular interest in her classroom security protocols and after-school routines. He asked about parent pickup procedures, emergency drills, and which doors she used when staying late to grade papers. By Thursday, they'd established similar schedules due to their work with schools. Matthew seemed to know exactly when she had playground duty, when she held parent conferences, and which days she ran the after-school art club. His attention to detail was both impressive and unsettling. When he suggested meeting at an educational supply store near her school, it seemed like a safe choice. The store was public, education-focused, and she shopped there regularly. Everything about his suggestion appeared considerate and professional. The store was unusually quiet when Katie arrived Saturday morning. Matthew was already there, dressed professionally and examining teaching materials. His knowledge of educational supplies seemed genuine as he discussed different products and their classroom applications. As they walked through the aisles, his questions became increasingly focused on her classroom's layout. He knew which windows faced the playground, where the emergency exits were located, and which storage closets stayed unlocked. His interest in school security felt excessive for someone in app development. The store's security cameras, usually blinking steadily, appeared to be offline. When Katie mentioned this to the only visible employee, they quickly looked away. Matthew's explanation about routine maintenance felt rehearsed, as if he'd used it before. Moving deeper into the store, Katie noticed they were completely alone. The few customers she'd seen earlier had disappeared, and even the background music had stopped. Matthew's friendly demeanor remained, but his eyes had taken on a calculating quality. Looking more closely at the educational materials he carried, Katie noticed they weren't current merchandise. The products matched items from her own classroom, things she'd only shown in private teacher blogs or closed social media groups. The air grew thick with tension as Matthew's educational technology expert facade began to crack. His questions about classroom security shifted from professional interest to something more sinister. Each comment revealed detailed knowledge of her school's vulnerabilities. Katie's attempt to check her phone revealed no signal, unusual for the area. Matthew watched her realization with detached interest, explaining how easy it was to disrupt cell service with the right equipment. His technical knowledge wasn't about educational apps but surveillance systems. Through rising panic, Katie recognized items he carried matched missing supplies reported by other teachers in the district. His research hadn't been about app development. He'd been studying school security systems and teacher routines across multiple campuses. The store's layout now felt like a trap, with Matthew positioning himself between Katie and potential exits. His knowledge of education hadn't come from developing learning tools. It had come from systematically studying how to exploit school environments. When Katie tried to move toward the front of the store, Matthew mentioned how empty schools were during winter break. His voice had lost its warmth, taking on the tone of someone who had orchestrated this scene many times before. The truth emerged with horrifying clarity. Matthew wasn't an educational technology developer. He'd been using stolen credentials and fake apps to access school systems, studying security protocols and teacher routines. The educational supply store was just his latest hunting ground. His phone displayed surveillance photos from multiple schools, teachers working late, children at recess, empty hallways after hours. Every educational app he'd developed was actually spyware, designed to gather information about school schedules and security measures. Through her fear, Katie remembered something crucial: her school's new safety protocols. After recent security incidents, teachers were required to activate location tracking during any education-related meetings, even off-campus. Her phone, though showing no signal, was still broadcasting her location. Matthew's careful research had missed this recent change. He'd studied old security measures but hadn't caught the district's quiet implementation of new protective systems. His outdated information was about to be his downfall. As he moved to grab her, Katie's teacher instincts kicked in. Years of handling classroom emergencies had taught her to stay calm under pressure. She knew help was coming. Her location alert had already triggered the district's security response. The district's security team arrived with local police, their response coordinated through the new safety system. Matthew's carefully planned trap fell apart as officers surrounded the store. His research into school security had failed to uncover the district's partnership with local law enforcement. Investigation revealed the scope of his operation. Multiple teaching supply stores across several states had reported similar incidents. Matthew had created a network of fake educational technology credentials, using them to study and target educators who worked with young children. The case led to major changes in how schools verified educational technology partners. Katie helped develop new safety protocols for teachers meeting education vendors or technology developers. Her experience highlighted how predators could exploit the trust inherent in educational communities. Recovery meant rebuilding her sense of security in educational spaces. Katie continued teaching, but with a new focus on school safety. She helped train other teachers to recognize signs of surveillance and trust their instincts about unusual behavior, even from seemingly professional sources. The incident changed how educational communities approach security. Schools implemented stricter verification processes for technology partners, and teachers developed better systems for protecting their personal information. Katie's story became a warning about how predators could use educational expertise to gain trust. Today, Katie still teaches third grade, but with a deeper understanding of school security. She helps other educators recognize the difference between genuine educational professionals and those who would exploit their trust. Her experience taught her that in education, the most dangerous predators are those who understand how to use our dedication to children against us. Claire Thompson, 28, worked as a flight attendant for a major airline, basing herself out of Atlanta. Standing 5'7", with auburn hair typically styled for flights, she maintained an active lifestyle despite irregular schedules. Her modest one-bedroom apartment near the airport served as a peaceful refuge between trips, though lately it had felt lonely during her off days. After her last relationship ended when her ex couldn't handle her travel schedule, she'd spent 3 months on Hinge trying to meet someone who understood her lifestyle. Her latest layover in Atlanta left her with an unexpected 4-day break, a rare treat in her hectic schedule. As she relaxed on her small balcony, scrolling through profiles, she came across Robert. At 34, he worked as an airline pilot for a different carrier, his photos showing him in uniform and at various destinations. His profile demonstrated genuine understanding of aviation life, with references to time zones and layover schedules that resonated with her experiences. His background appeared solid: verified pilot's license, airline employment confirmed through LinkedIn, and a respectable history in commercial aviation. Each photo showed professionalism while revealing snippets of personality through candid shots at different airports and crew events. The mix felt authentic rather than staged, displaying an understanding of aviation culture that couldn't easily be faked. Claire found herself analyzing his profile more thoroughly than usual, her flight attendant's attention to detail, noting the consistency in his uniform elements and crew interactions. Everything aligned with what she knew about commercial pilots, from his base location to his typical routes. His photos showed current aircraft types and accurately depicted crew areas that passengers wouldn't know about. Their match was instant, followed by a message that showed he'd read her profile carefully. Noticed you're based out of ATL too. Must have crossed paths at Terminal B crew check-in. Love how your profile balances professionalism with personality. Rare in our industry. The reference to specific terminal details added credibility to his aviation background. Robert's initial message led to an exchange about airline life, comparing schedules and sharing stories about difficult passengers and memorable flights. His knowledge of aviation protocols and procedures seemed comprehensive, demonstrating familiarity with both pilot and flight attendant responsibilities. Their conversation flowed naturally, grounded in shared understanding of their unique profession. Their early messages focused on aviation topics, trading stories about routes and layovers. Robert showed impressive knowledge of flight operations, discussing everything from weather patterns to crew scheduling systems. His insights about airline procedures matched Claire's experiences, creating an immediate sense of professional camaraderie through their shared understanding of industry specifics. As their chats progressed, Robert demonstrated increasing familiarity with Claire's usual routes and layover patterns. He mentioned specific flights she'd worked, hotels she'd stayed at, and crew members she knew. When asked about this knowledge, He explained that pilots and flight attendants often shared information through crew networks, making his awareness seem plausible if slightly unsettling. Their conversations expanded beyond work to personal interests, though Robert kept returning to questions about her schedule and travel patterns. He knew which parking garage she used at the airport, which crew entrance she preferred, even which hotels she typically stayed at during layovers. His explanations about pilot scheduling giving him access to this information became less convincing. The discussion moved to meeting in person, with Robert suggesting the airport crew lounge during their overlapping ground time. He knew her upcoming schedule in detail, proposing specific times that matched her layovers. The precision of his knowledge about her movements felt increasingly uncomfortable, though his aviation background made such information technically accessible. Their messages continued, with Robert revealing more about his understanding of her routine. He referenced specific details about her apartment complex near the airport, mentioned seeing her at local spots during her off days, and commented on her usual running route around the neighborhood. Each message showed more surveillance than casual observation or professional knowledge. When setting up their meeting, Robert insisted on the crew lounge during a particular time slot, claiming it would be quiet then. His knowledge of staff schedules and security patterns seemed to extend beyond what even a pilot should know, though he maintained a professional tone that made questioning his intentions feel paranoid. The crew lounge was unusually empty when Claire arrived, despite it normally being busy during shift changes. Robert was already there, his pilot's uniform and airline ID matching his photos perfectly. The professional setting initially put her at ease, surrounded by familiar airline protocols and security measures she trusted. As they talked, Robert's knowledge of aviation operations revealed concerning gaps. His uniform looked correct at first glance, but showed subtle inconsistencies in current airline standards. When another pilot entered briefly, Robert's interaction lacked the casual familiarity typical among crew members, instead showing practiced but artificial responses. Claire's trained eye for security details noticed more discrepancies. The crew lounge's usual security cameras appeared offline, their status lights dark. The card reader at the door showed signs of tampering, though subtle enough that casual observation would miss it. Robert's pilot ID, while convincing at first glance, didn't reflect the UV security features her flight attendant training had taught her to watch for. The conversation shifted as Robert guided them toward a more isolated section of the lounge, away from potential foot traffic. His questions became focused on her specific flight patterns, living situation, and security habits. The professional pilot demeanor remained, but an underlying intensity emerged that set off her internal alarms. Looking more closely at their surroundings, Claire realized the crew lounge felt staged. The usually active crew scheduling monitors showed looped footage rather than live updates. The few other people she'd glimpsed had disappeared, leaving them alone in a space that should never be empty during operating hours. Every aspect of the environment felt carefully orchestrated. Robert's demeanor changed subtly as he positioned himself between Claire and the exit. His knowledge of airline operations now revealed itself as carefully researched rather than lived experience. Each comment about her schedule and habits showed methodical surveillance rather than professional familiarity. The air grew tense as Robert's pilot persona began to crack. His aviation terminology became inconsistent, mixing outdated phrases with current jargon in ways that betrayed memorization rather than experience. When Claire tested him with a standard pilot response protocol, his answer revealed crucial gaps in basic flight knowledge that no commercial pilot would have. Claire's attempt to check her crew messaging system revealed the app had been blocked, though the airport's Wi-Fi appeared functional. Robert watched her realization with calculated interest, explaining how easy it was to disrupt specific applications with the right equipment. His technical knowledge wasn't about flying planes, but about disabling security systems. Through rising panic, Claire recognized elements of her crew security training taking on new meaning. The isolated location, the disabled cameras, the blocked communications. Every detail matched the warning signs they'd been taught to watch for. Robert's research into airline operations hadn't been for flying, it had been for hunting flight crew members. The crew lounge's layout now felt like a trap, with Robert using his knowledge of airport security patterns to create an isolated zone. His understanding of airline schedules and crew movements came from studying potential victims rather than professional experience. Every bit of aviation knowledge he demonstrated had been cultivated to exploit crew trust. When Claire attempted to move toward the door, Robert revealed more about his operation. He'd been tracking flight crews across multiple airports, using stolen credentials and forged IDs to access secure areas. His pilot persona was just one of many uniforms he used to blend into different airport environments. The professional warmth in his voice disappeared completely as he explained how flight crews made perfect targets. Their regular schedules, predictable layover patterns, and trust in fellow aviation professionals made them ideal victims. He'd studied their habits across multiple airlines, learning how to exploit the very security systems designed to protect them. The truth emerged with chilling clarity. Robert wasn't a pilot, but a predator who specialized in targeting airline crew. His knowledge of aviation came from months of studying flight patterns, crew schedules, and airport security protocols. The pilot's uniform and credentials were high-quality forgeries, crafted specifically to exploit the airline industry's culture of professional trust. Through the haze of fear, Claire's flight attendant training kicked in. She recognized signs of other crew members who had gone missing during layovers, their disappearances attributed to schedule changes or personal issues. Robert's methodical approach suggested he had perfected this routine across multiple airports and airlines. As he moved to prevent her escape, Claire noticed his watch, an expensive model popular among senior pilots. However, her years of crew experience let her spot a crucial detail. It showed the wrong time zone for Atlanta. A real pilot would never make such a basic error, their lives revolving around precise time management across multiple zones. This small detail confirmed what her instincts had been screaming. Everything about Robert was carefully researched but ultimately fake. His understanding of aviation procedures was extensive but theoretical, missing the subtle, practical knowledge that only comes from actual flight experience. He had studied their world, but didn't truly belong to it. Claire's mind raced through her crew security training, particularly the new protocols implemented after several flight attendants had gone missing in different cities. The airline had recently updated their security measures, including a hidden panic feature in their crew ID badges, a feature Robert's outdated research wouldn't know about. While maintaining conversation to avoid alerting him, Claire managed to activate her badge's panic button. The new system was designed specifically for situations where crew members couldn't openly call for help, silently alerting airport security to an emergency while appearing completely normal to anyone watching. Airport security's response was swift and silent, their approach coordinated through the new crew protection protocols. Years of handling potential threats in confined spaces had taught them how to manage situations without escalation. Robert's carefully constructed pilot persona crumbled as officers appeared simultaneously through multiple entrances, cutting off any escape routes. Investigation revealed the full scope of his operation. Multiple airlines reported similar incidents of someone using forged crew credentials to access secure areas. Robert had created an elaborate system for studying and targeting flight crews, exploiting their predictable patterns and professional trust. His detailed records helped authorities connect him to several unsolved disappearances in the aviation community. Claire's experience led to major changes in airline security protocols. Crew identification systems were enhanced, and new verification procedures were implemented for accessing secure areas. Her attention to detail and quick thinking helped expose vulnerabilities in existing security measures, leading to industry-wide improvements in crew safety. The incident changed how airlines approached crew security during layovers. New buddy systems were implemented, and crew scheduling was modified to ensure no one was isolated during ground time. Claire helped develop training programs to help other crew members recognize similar threats, using her experience to illustrate how predators could exploit aviation protocols. Despite the trauma, Claire continued flying, refusing to let fear ground her. Her experience strengthened the bond between flight crew, creating more awareness and support within the aviation community. She worked with airline security teams to improve protective measures, ensuring other crew members would be safer. Today, Claire serves as a crew safety instructor alongside her regular flights, teaching other aviation professionals how to recognize and respond to security threats. Her story became a crucial part of airline security training, demonstrating how attention to detail and trust in one's instincts can save lives. The experience taught her that in aviation, the most dangerous predators aren't always the ones you're trained to expect. Emma Carter, 27, worked as a waitress at an upscale Italian restaurant in downtown Boston, while running a successful food review blog on the side. At 5'6", with dark hair usually styled professionally for work, she'd spent 3 years building her online following with honest reviews and detailed food photography. Her modest but cozy apartment in Beacon Hill doubled as a photography studio for her blog content. After her last relationship ended 6 months ago, she'd finally decided to try Hinge, encouraged by the steady stream of positive comments on her latest restaurant reviews. Late one evening after a busy dinner shift, while editing photos for her blog, she came across Thomas's profile. At 32, he described himself as a restaurant consultant with an impressive portfolio of successful venues across the city. His photos showed genuine knowledge of fine dining, with shots of elegant plating and behind-the-scenes kitchen operations that caught her professional eye. Unlike the usual foodie profiles she encountered, his demonstrated real expertise in restaurant operations and culinary techniques. Thomas's background appeared solid, with verifiable connections to several top restaurants in Boston. His knowledge of the industry seemed comprehensive, from wine pairings to kitchen management. Each photo in his profile showcased different aspects of restaurant culture: staff meetings, menu planning sessions, and elegant dining rooms. The mix felt authentically professional rather than just someone who enjoyed eating out. Their match was immediate, followed by a message that showed he'd read her blog thoroughly. Your recent review of Bella Luna captured exactly what's wrong with their nouveau Italian concept. The plating issues you noticed in the third course reflect deeper kitchen organization problems. His insight demonstrated genuine industry knowledge, while referencing details she'd only mentioned in her private notes. When Emma reviewed his profile more carefully, she noticed he'd consulted for several restaurants she'd reviewed positively. His criticisms of troubled venues aligned perfectly with her own observations, showing a deep understanding of both front and back of house operations. Everything about his profile suggested someone who could appreciate both her current work and her aspirations in food writing. The timing seemed perfect. She'd been looking for insider perspectives for her blog's upcoming feature on Boston's restaurant industry. Thomas's experience could provide valuable insights, and his message suggested he'd be willing to share his expertise. His profile seemed to bridge her worlds of hands-on restaurant work and food writing perfectly. Their initial messages focused on the Boston restaurant scene, sharing insights about upcoming openings and recent closures. Thomas displayed impressive knowledge of both well-known establishments and hidden gems, offering perspectives that matched Emma's own experiences while working in various kitchens. His understanding of restaurant operations went beyond surface-level observations to include details about specific chefs, supplier relationships, and internal dynamics. As their conversations deepened, Thomas revealed increasing familiarity with Emma's work history and blog content. He referenced specific shifts she'd worked, details from unpublished drafts, and photos she hadn't posted yet. When she questioned this knowledge, he explained about his extensive industry network and research into food bloggers for consulting purposes. His explanations seemed plausible but left her slightly uneasy. Their discussions about the restaurant industry became more detailed, with Thomas showing particular interest in her current workplace. He knew the staff schedule, delivery times, and security protocols, information that seemed beyond normal consultant knowledge. His questions about the restaurant's operations focused increasingly on access points and quiet periods rather than business aspects. The conversation shifted to meeting in person when Thomas suggested touring a new restaurant he was consulting for. He mentioned it was still under renovation, making it perfect for a private tasting and photo opportunity for her blog. The location was in a trendy but quiet area of the city, and he offered to show her the behind-the-scenes operations that her readers would love. Their messaging had expanded to include detailed discussions of her daily routine, with Thomas often mentioning seeing her at various restaurants she reviewed. He could describe exactly what she'd ordered, where she'd sat, and who she'd talked to, though she couldn't remember seeing him. His explanations about consulting requiring careful observation of service patterns began to sound more like surveillance than professional research. As they finalized plans to meet, Thomas's knowledge of her schedule became increasingly evident. He knew her work shifts, her blog posting schedule, and her usual photography sessions. He suggested meeting at a time when she typically edited photos alone at the new restaurant location, explaining the quiet would be perfect for discussing industry insights. The restaurant was located in a recently renovated industrial building on the outskirts of Boston's restaurant district. Thomas greeted Emma outside, wearing professional attire that matched his profile photos perfectly. The building's exterior looked legitimate, with high-end restaurant equipment visible through papered windows and construction permits displayed properly in the front. As they entered through the service entrance, Emma's trained eye for restaurant layouts noticed subtle irregularities. The kitchen setup didn't follow standard commercial flow patterns, and some of the equipment looked more decorative than functional. Thomas explained away her concerns by mentioning unique design concepts, but his answers about specific operational details became increasingly vague. The space was completely empty of construction workers despite being mid-renovation. Thomas's explanation about it being a special private viewing didn't quite align with the active permits displayed outside. The building felt staged, like a movie set version of a restaurant, rather than an actual establishment in progress. Every element looked correct at first glance, but felt wrong upon closer inspection. Moving deeper into the space, Emma noticed more discrepancies. The freezer door had unusual locks. The office cameras were positioned to view the entire space rather than typical security angles, and the emergency exits showed signs of being permanently sealed. Her experience in restaurants had taught her what normal safety measures looked like, and these were all wrong. Thomas's behavior shifted as they reached the main dining room. His restaurant industry knowledge became less natural, as if recited, rather than lived. When Emma asked about specific operational details that any consultant would know, his answers revealed gaps in basic restaurant management knowledge. The professional warmth in his voice had been replaced by something more calculating. The room's layout now felt deliberately disorienting, with mirrors positioned to confuse direction and exits hidden behind heavy curtains. Thomas had positioned himself between Emma and the main entrance, his movements showing practiced precision rather than casual tour guidance. Every aspect of the space seemed designed to trap rather than serve guests. The temperature seemed to drop as Thomas's restaurant consultant facade began to crack. His industry terminology became inconsistent, mixing outdated terms with current trends in ways that revealed research rather than experience. When Emma tested him with standard kitchen protocols, his responses showed crucial gaps in basic restaurant operations that no legitimate consultant would have. Emma's attempt to check her phone revealed no signal despite the building's downtown location. Thomas watched her realization with detached interest, explaining how the building's special insulation for wine storage affected cell reception. His technical knowledge wasn't about restaurant operations, but about creating isolated spaces. The renovation permits she'd seen outside were forgeries, part of an elaborate setup. Looking around with growing panic, Emma noticed details her restaurant experience had trained her to recognize. The kitchen equipment wasn't just decorative, it had been modified for sinister purposes. The freezer's unusual locks weren't for food safety but for containment. Every aspect of the space had been designed to look like a restaurant while serving a much darker purpose. Thomas's movements became more predatory as he revealed the truth about his operation. He'd been using restaurant consulting as a cover to study potential victims, particularly targeting food bloggers and restaurant workers who posted their locations and schedules online. Emma's detailed blog posts about her work schedule and favorite restaurants had made her an ideal target. The building itself was arranged like a maze, with each section designed to disorient. Thomas explained how her own blog had helped him perfect his technique. Her detailed reviews of restaurant layouts had taught him how to create spaces that looked normal while hiding their true purpose. Every mirror, every curtain, every false exit had been placed according to insights gained from her writing. Through her rising fear, Emma realized the extent of his research. He'd studied her blog posts and reviews to understand exactly how she analyzed restaurant spaces. Her professional attention to detail had given him a blueprint for creating the perfect trap, designed specifically to fool someone with her expertise. The very skills she'd developed as a food writer had been used against her. The truth emerged in horrifying detail. Thomas wasn't a restaurant consultant, but a predator who specialized in targeting people in the food industry. He'd created elaborate fake restaurants across multiple cities, using industry knowledge gained from studying food blogs and restaurant reviews to make them convincing. Each location was carefully crafted to appeal to culinary professionals while hiding its true purpose. As Thomas moved to prevent her escape, Emma's years of restaurant work provided unexpected advantages. She recognized the kitchen layout was based on an old review she'd written about safety hazards in restaurant design. The very flaws she'd criticized were now part of his trap, but her knowledge of them might help her escape. Every detail he'd copied from her blog posts was filed away in her memory. Emma's mind raced through her mental catalog of restaurant layouts as Thomas revealed more about his operation. He'd targeted other food writers and restaurant workers, using their own online content to study their routines and preferences. The consultant persona was just one of many he used to approach victims, each crafted based on their specific interests in the food industry. The building's design suddenly made terrible sense. It incorporated elements from various restaurants she'd reviewed, assembled into a confusing maze. Thomas had studied her writing style and photography angles to understand exactly how she analyzed spaces. He'd used her own expertise to create an environment specifically designed to disorient someone with her training. But Thomas had made one crucial mistake. In studying Emma's published content so carefully, he'd missed her recent collaboration with a restaurant security consulting firm. Her latest unpublished article draft focused on new safety measures being implemented in Boston's restaurant industry, including the silent alarm system she just activated through her phone's restaurant review app. The app, designed to alert authorities to safety issues in restaurants, was still transmitting her location despite the building's signal blocking. Thomas had studied her old posts, but hadn't known about her recent work on restaurant security. His outdated research was about to be his downfall. The response was immediate and coordinated. Boston's Restaurant Crime Task Force, created after a series of incidents in the industry, had been monitoring Emma's safety beacon as part of their new protection program for food writers. Thomas's carefully constructed fake restaurant became evidence as specialized teams documented everything before he could destroy it. Investigation revealed the full scope of his operation. Multiple food bloggers and restaurant workers had disappeared after meeting with supposed industry consultants. Thomas had used his knowledge of the restaurant world to create perfect covers, exploiting the industry's reliance on word-of-mouth recommendations and professional networking. The case led to major changes in how the restaurant industry approached security. Emma helped develop new safety protocols for food writers and restaurant workers, particularly focusing on protecting those who posted about their work online. Her experience highlighted how detailed industry knowledge could be weaponized by predators who studied public content. Emma continued her food writing, but with a new focus on industry safety. Her blog expanded to include resources for restaurant workers and writers about protecting themselves while maintaining their online presence. The incident showed her how the very details that made food writing valuable could also create vulnerabilities. The restaurant community rallied around her story, implementing new verification systems for industry consultants and increasing security awareness. Emma's experience became a cautionary tale in culinary schools and food writing circles about the importance of balancing professional exposure with personal safety. Today, Emma's blog is more successful than ever, but with careful consideration for security, she helps other food writers recognize the difference between genuine industry professionals and those who study the restaurant world for darker purposes. Her experience taught her that in the culinary world, the most dangerous predators are those who learn to exploit our passion for sharing food culture. Hannah Mitchell, 26, worked as a personal trainer at a boutique gym in downtown San Diego. At 5'6", with athletic build from years of competitive swimming, she'd built a loyal client base through her specialized aquatic fitness programs. Her tiny, studio apartment near Ocean Beach gave her easy access to both work and her favorite swimming spots. Living alone since her roommate moved out 2 months ago, Hannah had reluctantly joined Tinder at her client's urging. Between early morning swim sessions and late-night training appointments, traditional dating proved challenging. Her profile highlighted her passion for fitness and outdoor activities, attracting mostly gym enthusiasts and weekend warriors. One evening after her last client, while stretching on her yoga mat, she matched with James. At 31, he owned several successful fitness centers across Southern California, his profile showing professional photos of him leading group classes and working with clients. Unlike typical gym selfies, his images demonstrated proper form and genuine coaching expertise. James's background checked out perfectly: certified strength coach, recognized fitness certifications, and legitimate business licenses for his gyms. His social media presence showed consistent involvement in the fitness community, with client testimonials and professional workshops. Everything aligned with someone who took health and fitness as seriously as she did. Their match led to an immediate message that showed he'd researched her thoroughly. "Love your innovative approach to aquatic resistance training. The techniques you posted about last month could revolutionize rehabilitation programs." His comment referenced a specialized training method she'd developed, though she couldn't recall sharing it publicly. As Hannah reviewed his profile more carefully, she noticed his gyms focused on the same type of specialized training she practiced. His understanding of aquatic fitness principles seemed advanced, matching her own expertise in ways that felt both impressive and slightly unsettling. Every detail about his professional background appeared carefully curated to align with her interests. Their initial messages centered on fitness methodology and training techniques. James displayed impressive knowledge of exercise science, discussing biomechanics and rehabilitation protocols with expertise that matched Hannah's specialized training. His insights about aquatic resistance training seemed particularly well-informed, though something about his technical knowledge felt rehearsed. Throughout the week, James revealed increasing familiarity with Hannah's work routine and training methods. He knew her client's schedule, preferred pool lanes, and specific exercises she used. When questioned, he explained about studying various trainers' techniques for his business, but but his knowledge of her private sessions seemed too detailed for casual observation. The conversation shifted toward facility management, with James showing particular interest in her gym's security setup and access protocols. He asked about the building's layout, staff schedules, and maintenance periods. His questions focused increasingly on times when the facility was least occupied rather than peak business hours. By Thursday, their discussions had turned to meeting in person. James suggested showing her his newest facility's aquatic center, mentioning it was still under construction but would be perfect for demonstrating new training techniques. The location was in an industrial area being redeveloped for fitness centers, supposedly equipped with state-of-the-art pool technology. Their messages continued, with James revealing more about his knowledge of Hannah's daily routine. He referenced specific training sessions she'd conducted, client interactions she'd had, and even mentioned seeing her morning swims at the beach. Each comment showed more surveillance than professional interest would warrant. As they finalized plans to meet, James's attention to detail became increasingly evident. He knew exactly which days she finished early, which parking spots she preferred, and her usual routes home. His explanations about researching potential business partners started sounding more like stalking than professional networking. The fitness center occupied a converted warehouse in a quiet industrial park. James greeted Hannah outside, wearing professional athletic wear that matched his profile images. The building looked legitimate from the outside, with high-end exercise equipment visible through the windows and proper business permits displayed. As they entered through a side door, Hannah's trained eye for gym layouts noticed concerning details. The equipment arrangement didn't follow standard safety protocols, and the pool area lacked proper emergency exits. James explained these as innovative design choices, but his answers about specific safety features became increasingly vague. The facility was completely empty despite James claiming it was partially operational. His explanation about a private tour during off hours didn't align with the operating hours posted outside. The space felt staged, like a display model rather than a functioning gym. Each piece of equipment looked new but showed signs of never being used. Moving deeper into the facility, Hannah spotted more red flags. The security cameras were positioned to monitor people rather than protect equipment. The pool's emergency phone was disconnected, and the locker rooms had industrial-grade locks that seemed excessive. Her experience managing gym facilities had taught her what normal safety measures looked like. James's behavior shifted as they approached the pool area. His fitness knowledge became less natural, as if recited from research rather than experience. When Hannah asked about specific training protocols, his answers revealed gaps in basic exercise science that no legitimate trainer would have. The pool area's layout now felt deliberately isolated, with mirrors positioned to confuse direction, and exits hidden behind equipment. James had maneuvered himself between Hannah and the main entrance, his movements showing practiced precision rather than casual touring. The entire space seemed designed to trap rather than train. The chlorine smell grew stronger as James's fitness expert facade began to crack. His exercise terminology became inconsistent, mixing outdated protocols with current trends in ways that revealed study rather than experience. When Hannah tested him with standard training questions, his responses showed crucial gaps in basics fitness knowledge. Hannah's attempt to check her phone revealed no signal despite the building's urban location. James watched her realization with calculated interest, explaining how the pool's special filtration system affected cell reception. His technical knowledge wasn't about fitness, but about creating isolated spaces. The business permits she'd seen outside were forgeries. Looking around with growing panic, Hannah noticed details her trainer experience had taught her to recognize. The exercise equipment wasn't just unused, it had been modified for restraint, rather than workout purposes. The pool's unusual design wasn't for training, but for preventing escape. Every aspect of the facility had been designed to look like a gym while serving a darker purpose. James's movements became more predatory as he revealed the truth about his operation. He'd been using gym ownership as a cover to study potential victims, particularly targeting fitness professionals who posted their routines and locations online. Hannah's detailed posts about her training schedule had made her an ideal target. The facility itself was arranged like a maze, with each section designed to disorient. James explained how Hannah's own social media had helped him perfect his technique. Her posts about gym safety had taught him how to create spaces that looked normal while hiding their true purpose. Every mirror, every machine, every locked door had been placed according to insights gained from her content. Through her rising fear, Hannah realized the extent of his research. He'd studied her training videos and facility tours to understand exactly how she analyzed gym spaces. Her professional attention to detail had given him a blueprint for creating the perfect trap, designed specifically to fool someone with her expertise. The very skills she'd developed as a trainer had been used against her. The truth emerged in horrifying detail. James wasn't a gym owner, but a predator who specialized in targeting fitness professionals. He'd created elaborate fake facilities across multiple cities, using industry knowledge gained from studying fitness influencers and trainers to make them convincing. Each location was carefully crafted to appeal to fitness experts, while hiding its true purpose. As James moved to prevent her escape, Hannah's years of training provided unexpected advantages. She recognized the facility layout was based on posts she'd made about gym design flaws. The very issues she'd criticized were now part of his trap, but her knowledge of them might help her escape. Every detail he'd copied from her social media was something she understood intimately. Hannah's mind raced through her mental catalog of gym layouts as James revealed more about his operation. He'd targeted other trainers and fitness professionals, using their own online content to study their routines and preferences. The gym owner persona was just one of many he used to approach victims, each crafted based on their specific fitness specialties. The building's design suddenly made terrible sense. It incorporated elements from various gyms she'd reviewed online, assembled into a confusing maze. James had studied her teaching style and demonstration videos to understand exactly how she analyzed spaces. He'd used her own expertise to create an environment specifically designed to disorient someone with her training. But James had made one crucial mistake. In studying Hannah's published content so carefully, he'd missed her recent partnership with a gym security consulting firm. Her latest project involved testing new emergency response systems for fitness facilities, including the waterproof panic button she wore disguised as a fitness tracker. The device, designed to work even underwater, was still transmitting her location despite the building's signal blocking. James had studied her old posts, but hadn't known about her recent work on facility safety. His outdated research was about to be his downfall. The response was immediate and coordinated. Local law enforcement's Gym Safety Task Force, created after a series of incidents targeting fitness professionals, had been monitoring Hannah's emergency beacon. James's carefully constructed fake facility became evidence as specialized teams documented everything before he could destroy it. Investigation revealed the full scope of his operation. Multiple trainers and fitness instructors had disappeared after meeting with supposed gym owners. James had used his knowledge of the fitness world to create perfect covers, exploiting the industry's reliance on social media presence and professional networking. The case led to major changes in how the fitness industry approached security. Hannah helped develop new safety protocols for trainers and gym staff, particularly focusing on protecting those who posted about their work online. Her experience highlighted how detailed industry knowledge could be weaponized by predators who studied public content. Hannah continued her training career, but with a new focus on facility safety. Her social media presence expanded to include resources for fitness professionals about protecting themselves while maintaining their online presence. The incident showed her how the very details that made fitness instruction valuable could also create vulnerabilities. The fitness community rallied around her story, implementing new verification systems for facility owners and increasing security awareness. Hannah's experience became a cautionary tale in personal training certification programs about the importance of balancing professional exposure with personal safety. Today, Hannah's training business is more successful than ever, but with careful consideration for security. She helps other fitness professionals recognize the difference between genuine industry experts and those who study the fitness world for darker purposes. Her experience taught her that in the fitness industry, the most dangerous predators are those who learn to exploit our passion for helping others.